Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Diana Wiley. I'm your host of Love, Lust, and Laughter. Maybe some of you saw this on the internet, but it's very funny. It shows Rod Serling. Some of you old enough, that includes myself, will remember the TV show The Twilight Zone, and it shows him talking. Imagine, if you will, where Cinco de Mayo falls on Taco Tuesday, only to be ruined by a virus named after a Mexican beer. that provides a chuckle, doesn't it, Sherry Winston?
I have to say, humor is so important right now. It's never been so important, I think, to have some humor in our lives.
It's so important. That's right. And you and I, who have talked a lot of times on this show, Sherry Winston is just a celebrated sexuality teacher. She's an award-winning author, medical professional who brings over 2 decades of experience as a certified nurse, midwife, and gynecology practitioner. So her book is, she has 2 books, but Succulent Sexcraft, we're going to pull from that one today, mention certain pages, and she also has Women's Anatomy of Arousal. So much good work, Sherry. These are unparalleled times, and you did a nice blurb for my book, soon to be published, and you used a phrase that I think is going to be the title of this program today, From Quarantining to Cocooning. Cocooning. And my book is Love in the Time of Corona. So, we're going to talk about how you can cocoon better by perhaps planning a date night at home, touching more, and laughing and playing together more. And, of course, there's more, but we'll try to get some of that in. This is an unbelievable time, isn't it? Can you tell us how it's been for you and your husband, Carl, and your practice?
Yes, my husband and I have been together for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both of a certain age. And
right.
So, there's multiple factors that are challenging. I think when you've been together a long time, it's hard just to keep things spicy and juicy and fun. Anyway, add to that that common experience of having less libido as you get older, and then throw us into the house together.
Yes,
for what has now been, I don't even know how long. And it can easily be a recipe for disaster. I know a lot of couples are struggling. I think for us, even that we're getting along really well, we're doing a very good job of being, nice to each other and supportive and not fighting or bickering or any of those things. And yet it's still so easy to just fall into the sort of habits of, monotony, right? Of just the same old, and the days slip by, and you forget to make it special. You forget to notice each other. It's hard to have juicy sexual energy. I know a lot of people were kind of like, oh, great, we'll have all this time and we'll be together. And it's just not necessarily the case that is going to translate into more play and more sex and more fun and more pleasure. And, we all have our different challenges. Some people have kids at home, whole other challenge, which we don't have. But everybody's got some challenges in this crazy time. And, those are ours. And then we're just trying to figure out as best we can how to make good use of this time. And also just how to take really good care of each other in this time, because it's both super stressful and also monotonous. So how do we manage all of those different factors? And we're doing the best we can. I can't say we're A+ students of our own wisdom at this point, but we are
yes.
putting some energy and effort into doing the best we can. So that's
where
we're at.
Yes, and it's one reason that I decided, along with my husband's help. He's actually a co-writer. He wants my name to be on the book, but he's actually a co-writer and a very good one. But we decided about mid-March that we needed to write a book, and the idea would be to use this COVID-19 pandemic, this forced togetherness, to use it as an opportunity to explore your sexual relationship, and it's not always easy, right? To rekindle the sparks of passion. And, of course, it is possible to have fun and discover deeper levels of intimacy, both for your partner and for yourself. I think that Brian and I have it a little bit easier because we still, even though we're married, we still are able to maintain my apartment and his home. And so we spend Wednesdays together, evenings and weekends, most of the weekends together. So that in and itself, that's called living apart together, which many couples are doing, especially ones over 50 where their children are launched and so on. But it does provide a little space for the forced togetherness. So that's helped. But we have written a lot of the book and most of it, and I thought for today's program we would look at planning a date night at home, because that's really important, and the importance of touch. These are all chapters in Love in the Time of Corona, the book soon to be published, my book soon to be published, and touch, and then laugh and play together. Both are chapters. So, yeah.
But, I think,
yes.
I mean, I think all of the things you're talking about and you wrote about with such wisdom in your book, because I got a little sneak peek ahead of time, are things that, as a sexuality teacher, for myself and you as a therapist, they're all things that we've been talking about with people for years, about making dates, that spontaneity is overrated and it's important to schedule things. And we've been talking about that, I'm sure, for all of our careers. And yet I think it's actually even more important right now because my days are just blurring together and the weeks are blurring together, and you'd think, well, with all this time I don't need to schedule, but I actually need to schedule our together time even more so.
Yes.
Because it's this weird blur of time. Like today I was on the phone with somebody and I said something about being Monday, and they were like, nope, it's Tuesday.
It is.
And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't even know what month it is. So the fact that I was close. So I just think scheduling time is more important than ever. And I'll just also throw in, it doesn't even have to be a date night now. It could be a date morning or a date afternoon.
Good point. Very good point. Morning or afternoon, which could be better.
What I have to say for me again, at a certain age, it's like I used to be really a night owl, but I get tired at night. I do so much better with an afternoon date time. My husband's a morning person, so he's up early, and morning is not good for me, but I'm really clear when my best time is, and so saying, okay, on Wednesday, let's make sure we know what day Wednesday is. Let's have a couple of hours in the afternoon to play and share some pleasure. And so I just want to throw in, I also like to emphasize it's about intimacy and connection, and sex may or may not happen. It's okay if it doesn't.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be like a pressure to have, now we have to perform and have sex, but it's about creating that opportunity to, get naked, look in each other's eyes, do some touching, do some breathing together. It may well lead to sex, but it might not. That's okay, as long as it gives you that time for the intimacy and connection that we need. And the more we have, the more likely we are to wind up actually wanting to have sex with each other.
Yes, but the intimacy and connection thing is so important, and there's lots in my book about outer course. And I don't think I use the word there, but it's everything but intercourse. And you're right; it can really help one feel closer just to touch. So planning the date night, date afternoon, date morning. I like that you said we might have more. And just to reiterate what you said, it's really easy to let time slip by and miss out on the benefits of having sex, the health benefits too. So have your calendar out so you know what day it is. And some people really do think that sex needs to be spontaneous for it to be good, and we know better, don't we? You and I have been talking about that for years with our clients. So you plan for romance and passion, and if you plan for it, it's more likely to happen. And the person with less sex drive can then anticipate it, perhaps, especially if some other things are in place, like your partner is being nice to you and touching you in some pleasurable ways. The
other thing about planning it is it gives you also an opportunity to talk about what it is you do really want and what turns you on, what turns you on, not just what would pleasure you during your date, but to be able to say to your partner, every time you touch me non-sexually, the day before, the morning before, it makes me feel connected, and that's going to get me more ready for our date. Or just because you're in the same house doesn't mean you can't send a little sexy text or leave your partner a note or wash the dishes or whatever it is, the things that make your partner feel loved and connected. So I think another advantage of sort of planning it is you can talk about it, which we don't do enough often, and you can share with your partner, these are the things that make me feel loved. And they might be different. For my partner, it might be that he reads to me what he wrote today, and I can listen to it with appreciation. That's going to make him feel really good. For me, it might be if he takes 10 minutes and gives me a shoulder rub. So I can say, these are all things that I'd love to have happen before our date. And then when we get to our date, I'm already going to feel more connected and less of that kind of lingering resentment that we can get when our partner's not meeting our needs, which we may not have communicated well.
Yes. That's a very good question. What are the things that makes me feel more connected to you, and to have that discussion with your partner. And if for couples that have children, small children, a lot of these suggestions are going to be a little more challenging to find privacy and quiet time. But we're going to forge ahead because there are a lot of things that apply that aren't even exactly sexual, including touch. And let's talk about touch. In your book, you have Succulent Sex Craft, your book. You have an exercise on page 228 about touching and feeling, and it not only talks about solo sex, but about partner play. And do you want to elaborate on this? I have it open to your book in this moment here?
Well, I think one of the things that can easily happen when we're touching is we're not really paying attention. We're not being mindful. We're not touching with awareness. So one of the great challenges can be, how do we increase that awareness? And a great way to do that is by turning off some of our other senses. So either closing your eyes or putting on a blindfold can be really fun, and that can often help us be more aware of the touch that's going on. And then you can play with, and I'll just add, setting up what we like to call a playpen or a sandbox, or setting up the game, saying, let's play this game. And let's play the game, and you set up a framework. Let's play it for, 10 minutes where I'm going to touch you, and then 10 minutes where you're going to touch me. And you can then, talk about, and then we'll have 10 minutes to talk about what happens. So you can play with, and you could do this, by the way, if you're a solo person, you can do this with yourself as well. But you can alternate playing with being aware of, let me see how to describe it. So if my hand is resting on your thigh, I could be aware of my hand, or I could be aware of your thigh. And so I can kind of play with toggling back and forth. I'm going to be aware of my hand and how it feels to stroke someone's silky skin and how that feels on my hand. And then I can shift my awareness just that little bit to the other person's body, or if it's yourself, to what it feels like to be the one receiving the touch, and how silky skin feels, or how smooth, or how furry. And so just doing games like that where you're playing with your awareness or playing with your imagination. If you have a pet and you're petting your animal, we call them pets, right? Because we like to pet them, right? But
yes,
if I'm petting my cat, I can focus on how their fur feels against my palm, or I can bring my awareness into their body and how does it feel to them to be stroked. I mean, there's so many fun ways to kind of play with feeling and touching and awareness and attention, and this can be a game. That could be the whole game. The game is just to play with that, and maybe one person's the giver, one person's the receiver, and then you switch, and then you talk about it. You can say, "Wow, that really was interesting to me. What happened when I touched like this?" And it can help us really shift the quality of the touch that we're giving, as well as the quality of our own awareness when we're receiving touch. So there's so many ways to play with touch. It's one of my favorite kinds of games. Playing.
Yeah, and you describe it very well in your book, and I liked your succulent summary at the end of your More Body, Vision, Touch, Taste, and Smell chapter. So you have the 6 P's of touch: presence, be present, and touch here now, and you've just talked about that. A lot of mindfulness in that. Purpose, hold a positive intention. Boy, isn't intention important? To think about what is my intention for our time together.
Yeah. And intention is totally transmitted through touch. If you are touching someone inattentively, or when you're actually feeling resentment about them, that is transmitted. If you are touching with awareness and attention and mindfulness and with love in your heart and care, that is transmitted. And I think it's important to know that that's transmitted, so we can hold a positive intention while we're doing it.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Sherry. Intention is totally communicated by touch. Your next point, number 3, is patience. Don't rush. Take your time. Isn't that important? I've said I've said two words a lot to my clients over the years. Slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
part of it is we have this idea about what sex is and what's supposed to happen, and that there's this goal and we should get there as quickly as possible. So a lot of people are touching because they think, well, I got to touch a little bit before I can get to the good stuff. And realize it's all good. It's all good. Let the touch be the touch. If you are stroking someone's thigh, enjoy the thigh. Don't be stroking the thigh because you want to get to their crotch.
Yes, exactly. Be where you are in the moment, and of course, this may lead to some discoveries, both for the person you're touching and for yourself. Because when we're touching and when we're massaging, we get as much benefit out of that as our partner does.
Yeah.
And so, but taking time and don't, as you say, don't rush. Take your time. And then your next point is precision. Be accurate and focused. Let's talk about that, Sherry.
Well, it's kind of like we could touch in a sloppy way. Like as you were just like slopping paint on a canvas, or you can touch in a way where you're being precise with the kind of touch, with the language of touch, with your focus. And again, this is an art form, so you can become skilled at touching in an accurate way and focusing on what you're doing. Again, I think part of it is that touch can be chaotic. It can be distracted, and again, we will know and we will feel that if someone's touching us that way. So, be accurate. Focus on what you're doing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Because we need this so much, because especially if a couple has been having some difficulties being locked up, and so many do, locked up together. Sometimes it can lead to emotional and physical overwhelm for the person, and then sometimes touching or being touched can be downright irritating. So we need to speak up about it. Pattern is your next point. Think musically and artistically. Use rhythm, themes, and motifs. Oh, I like this one a lot. And please talk about that, and then we'll expand on it a bit.
Well, imagine your finger painting on someone's body. And you could just slop paint on. Or you can paint where you're making, long strokes rhythmically, with a motif where they go up one side and down the other, and they get closer together and they get farther apart, and then you do feathering. I mean, it's just this is the way you might draw. Or if you were making music, this is how you would, have a theme and a motif, and then embroider that. And so this is a great kind of awareness and attention to bring to touch, thinking of it that way, so that, again, it's not chaotic. There's an element of predictability when you're using patterns that can be extremely soothing and arousing, and so it's a great, I think, mindset to have when you're touching, that you're that you're doodling on someone, that you are making music with your touch. So those, again, whatever kind of map works for you, whether it's musical or visual, apply that to your touch, and it's going to feel great to the person who's touching and to the one who's giving the touch. Also can help give you, if you're not quite sure what to do, then imagine you're drawing on their body, or imagine you're playing music on their body, and that can help guide you in ways to touch that will be pleasurable for givers and receivers.
Playing music on your partner's body, sometimes it helps if you have the music in the background is such that you choreograph your touch to the music. And that can be fun, and that can help you get into the music and get into the touch. I think as you are touching your partner, you need to, if you're the receiver, you need to give feedback. If the touch feels good, you got to say so. And maybe there might be soft moans that you don't always have to use the words. And also, if the touch is not good, it's important to say so. And what would feel good, so that your partner can adjust. And that means communication. A lot of couples need to communicate more about these things, and sometimes it's hard to do the baby steps, but to do it. And also to take initiative. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is such an important point. I just wanted to pause for a moment because I know we both talk about this as well, is there are no psychic partners. Nobody knows what you like and what you need. And one of the really key things is learning how to communicate in effective ways about touch and pleasure and our erotic life. And knowing that there are multiple ways to do that, that we can communicate with our body language and breath, we can communicate with sounds of pleasure, and we can communicate with words. And that there are ways to do that that are positive and encouraging, and ways to do that that are erotic and stimulating. And there are lots of ways to do that that are not going to have those positive effects, where a partner might feel criticized or judged or told what to do or all of those things. And I think one of the great ongoing learning journeys about our intimate relationships is learning how to do that well. And there's material in there for just so many different playpens, so many different little structured learning games where we can play with, for example, touch and giving feedback with body language and breath. And then we can play a game with touch and giving feedback with sound. And then the third game can be touch feedback with words. And then we can switch, and the other person can do those three. And then we can talk about it. And then that will lead to the next learning game, which might be, how can we use words in ways that are positive? Or the next learning game might be, how can we use shortcut words or signals? Like if your partner's doing something too fast and you want them to slow down, you can develop a signal where you tap on them in the rhythm that you'd like to be touched in.
And that's a very good idea. To tap on them, to use your fingers then as that might improve the rhythm that would feel better to you.
Exactly, but you need to develop that in a learning game, and I like to encourage people to sort of separate out, just like if we were playing a musical duet with somebody, separate out your jam session, which is your lovemaking pleasure session, where you're in it. Separate that out from a learning session where you're going to stop and practice particular skills together. And also a third thing where you're just going to talk about how it's going and what you might want to, what's going well, what might work better. And to have those three different things where you have that conversation. The conversation might identify a challenge. We're not going to be giving feedback to each other. Or when we do give feedback, it doesn't land well. What can we do about it? Then you develop a game, and then you play different games around how to learn that thing, and then you practice things. And so then the next time you're in the jam session, the spontaneous music of your sexual date experience, now you've got more skills that you can bring into that music-making session. So I think that's just one of the keys. And, this is a perfect time to have these kinds of conversations, learning games, and play sessions.
I agree. And over all of this, if you approach these exercises with a spirit of curiosity, with an openness to the possibility that you might learn something about yourself and about your partner. So imagine, and this is especially good for people that aren't feeling the desire. They need the stimulation first, the arousal first. But imagine feeling some anticipation about this new experience. Because, of course, when you're feeling anticipation, you might actually get a bonus of dopamine, because that's the neurotransmitter that's associated with pleasure and reward. It feels good. And so dopamine, studies have shown this, right, that dopamine is released in large amounts when we anticipate a pleasurable experience. So all of these things can be used to your advantage. Your last point on the 6 P's of touch is progression. Keep it moving and coherent. Expand on that, Sherry Winston.
It's a journey, right? It's a journey. You don't want to just get stuck in one place in your journey, right? So,
it's a journey.
You want to be here. You want to go there. At the same time, you don't want to just skip there, right? It's, if you're touching somebody's feet, do you want to just jump from their feet to their crotch? It's so much more of a pleasurable journey if you progress there in a sort of logical fashion, going from the foot up the ankles, hanging out in the calf, playing with the knee, working your way up the thigh. Speaking of anticipation and reward, so you want to get somewhere, but you also want to get there in a way that's going to create that anticipation, the build-up, and desire. It's going to help that desire happen, as opposed to feeling like, how did you get from here to there? It's just confusing to me, or I didn't have time to build up desire for you to get to a more erotic part of my body. So progression is a great little sort of mind map, again, to use to kind of go, what would be a fun way to get from here to there? What's the way I'm going to progress in this journey that's going to make my partner want me to get there, as opposed to feeling like, oh, you're there already? Which is especially common, I think, for those of us who are more the pussycat partner as opposed to the puppy dog partner. I know we've talked about this before, but for many women, and some men, but many women, we're more like pussycats. You don't start rubbing our belly right away, right?
Yeah, I remember you did talk about that on a previous. It's a very good example, so expand on it again, because I like it, and particularly for people that know dogs and cats. And by the way, those two animals are saviors for many, especially people living alone now.
Oh, my goodness, I know. Even with partners, believe me, our cats are a very important part of our staying safe and happy right now. I'm so grateful to have these little oxytocin machines. These little pleasure machines.
So talk a little bit more about the kitty cat versus the doggy.
Well, so you don't play with a cat the same way you play with a dog. They're both wonderful. I love dogs. I love cats. But if you want to rub the dog's tummy, most dogs, in about 30 seconds, they'll be on their back going, yes, rub my tummy. Please rub it. Dogs, like, you want to go out for a walk? They're like, yeah, let's go. They've got a lot of that energy and enthusiasm, and for people who are wired that way sexually, it means you could easily start sex play by going right to their juicy, tender bits. My husband is like that. Anytime I wanted to just dive into his crotch and start playing with his equipment, he would be thrilled. That would be great. Yeah. That works for him because he's wired like a dog, and I mean that in a good way. I am wired more like a pussycat. And if I want to rub my pussycat's belly, I do not start by trying to rub the belly, because my cat would scratch me and then be out of there, right? I need to start by creating connection, and then I rub her head, and I rub around her ears, and I scratch under her chin, and she lets me know she's ready for that. I'll scratch here, and then if I take my time and I go at her pace, sooner or later I will get that purring puddle of pussycat I'm after, and I can rub her belly, but only if I go at her pace. And so many women are wired more like that pussycat. So if you
very true,
as it were, you've got to take the time. You've got to be attentive, create that pleasure and safety, and allow us to relax and open, and then you get that wonderful oxytocin machine, the love and pleasure that we are capable of. But not if you go too fast. Not if you try and treat a pussycat like a puppy dog. It's just usually not going to work. Unless, now keeping in mind, none of this is absolute. They're just maps. So even though I'm more of a pussycat, sometimes I'm in a puppy dog mood.
And you make that clear. You make that clear to your husband, and he probably is very accommodating.
Well, if I'm in a puppy dog mood, that's going to make my puppy dog Guy very happy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because that's more his style. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well, this is actually a pretty good segue into some discussion about laugh and play together, because learning to be playful at times with your partner during sex is a key to increased satisfaction. And if you can be playful if you're, say, well, I'm going to pretend like I'm a kitty cat right now, and this is what I need. And, yeah, there's a lot of research that shows that couples who laugh together last together. I actually, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, 10 years ago, when I was still a widow. I had been a widow for 10 years at that point, and I joined Match.com, and I quoted as part of my profile something that I so believe in, and that is that couples who laugh together last together. And, I mean, sex is play, and a lot of couples have trouble with that because sometimes they've had very unfortunate childhoods where there was a lot of criticism, and they don't really know from the parents, and they don't really know how to laugh and play. They have trouble with it. That sex is a job. We have a job to do here, and this particularly gets in the way when a man has erectile dysfunction problems or even premature ejaculation problems. Yeah, I like to talk about creative silliness in life. Creative silliness.
So important. It's so important,
well,
and more now than ever, I think. And that is that ability to play together, and it's tricky because particularly with sex, I think our models of sex, our cultural models of sex, are usually so serious. If you watch porn, for example, you usually don't see them laughing and playing together. I mean, they're having sex, but they're usually so serious. And you don't see them, like making little jokes or being playful or laughing, not at each other, just to be very clear, but with each other. And
with each other.
If we can bring that to our lives and our sex play, it adds so much. But it can be challenging, I think, because we have this model that sex is supposed to be a serious thing. We're supposed to be serious and passionate, but so what can we do to inspire that? And one of the things you mentioned sort of was like we can play games. We could play wrestle. We can pretend to be animals, and make animal sounds. We can just obviously
yes,
we
I like
can
that.
play,
You suggest that in your
you
book. I
know,
like that a lot. Yeah.
we can play fantasy games also of different characters and roles and that sort of thing. So again, I think it becomes an opportunity for communication about what turns our partners on, what kind of games they might like to play, how do we get more giggling or silliness or fun in there. And then again, we can come up with ideas, and sometimes the way that I want to play and the way my partner wants to play might be different. Also. So what do we do there? Can we find some common ground, some overlap, or can I try a game that he thinks would be fun, even though my reaction might be kind of like, yeah, I don't know, but to be open and say, well, let's give it a whirl. You know, the worst that can happen is, I didn't really like the game that much. You know,
but
the best
sometimes,
that can happen is, that was really fun. So
yes.
I think it's important also to be open to the ways that your partner might want to play. And then what a great opportunity to try something novel, something new and different and that we've never done before. And that's important to bring in.
Very, very important. And I think that if you can, if people really have trouble with play, laughter can often lead the way back to play. And you've heard of, many people have, of laughter yoga. And you can find these online. And these are particularly popular in India. And it's a playful practice. It's a way of jump-starting your body's laughter response by prolonged voluntary laughter. I remember many years ago when I was in an acting class, they taught us we were learning how to laugh as an actor on stage. And this is what they do in laughter yoga. So you start out and you build up. So you do like this. Ha, 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 he, he, ha, 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 ha. So you build up, and then you're also thinking, and your brain probably doesn't know the difference between...
It doesn't, because as you were doing that, I started smiling and then I started laughing. Right?
You did, yeah.
Yeah, because of mirror neurons. My brain starts mirroring what you're doing, and it feels so good. Right? Yeah. Or, watch a comedy. Watch something funny on one of your screens. We think of, things you can watch on your screens that might lead to great sex, which might be something erotic, some kind of porn, something like that, which is fine. But you don't necessarily think, watch a comedy together and laugh together and then start connecting from there where you're already in that light, good, fun mood.
Love that idea. You can also search for jokes on YouTube, and there really are thousands to choose from. Even the bad ones might make you laugh.
Right.
And then I think people can check out a porn website for bloopers and outtakes, and then you can enjoy some funny moments.
I never thought of that.
I mean, getting a look behind the scenes of a sex film can help you realize that porn is simply a fantasy, and it's designed for entertainment, and it's not real life, and it's also, we know this for sure, it's not good sex education. The problem is too many men in particular have used, especially young men, have used it as education, but that's a whole other show, isn't it?
It is another show. It is another show. I do want to point out, though, that there is, within the giant haystack of the world of porn, there is some good sex-positive, pleasure-positive, women-positive porn out there. So,
and some of the positive,
but there is.
Some of the positive porn is produced by females. And the late Candida Royale certainly did it, and now there's a woman named Erica Lust, and she makes some wonderful films that
exactly
that look at the relationship, because a lot of times a woman will be looking at a porn scene, a typical porn scene, with her partner, and she's wondering, well, how come that couple is fucking? Well, because they're in a relationship. They like each other. And so some of the more female-centric porn points that out, that they look at the relationship as well as the sex part. And they're hard to separate out, because we know that when now it's a little bit, I'm going astray, but when couples have good emotional intimacy, they almost always have better physical intimacy. Yeah, so playful sex. Let's talk a little bit more about that. I think I want to go back to creative silliness within sex and point out that the word silly did not originally mean ridiculous or trivial. You know, it comes from the Old English saelig, S-A-E-L-I-G, and, you know, that meant originally prosperous, happy, and healthy. So I would say a little silliness can help you enjoy all of those blessings. Yes, to be a little silly. But it takes some warm-up, doesn't it?
How about salacious silliness?
Oh, I love that, salacious silliness. You're such a creative person, Sherry. So that's great. So expand on that with your really creative mind.
Well, I think what I was thinking about before we were talking, that I didn't get to talk about one of the sort of little games you can play. I think it's actually great for anytime you're trying to shift energy, where you make monkey faces and monkey noises and just all kinds, like the most ridiculous faces and noises, and you can just do it with your face, but you can also do your whole body and just sort of jump around being silly for 30 seconds. And it can be when you've been having some kind of upset or disagreement and you want to get over it, but you've still got that emotion stuck in your body. You can also just sort of shake it and vibrate it out. And so those are things that we can use lots of different times, but also in the bedroom when we're having a hard time turning off our brain, or we had an interaction that didn't work, and then maybe we kind of got derailed from the sexual energy. And so instead of sort of trying to get all serious and get back on track, it's like, let's get silly for a minute and just be ridiculous. And it's one of those things that you start doing it in 30 seconds, going, making faces and shaking and jumping around or whatever. And it just shifts everything, just shifts the energy. So it's great to have those kinds of little tools in your toolbox to, just shake it up, shake it out, silly it out, and then start over from there, or start from that point. So that's a fun. In your books, you talk a lot about energy and sexual energy, and you just mentioned shifting the energy. And it takes, I think, real awareness and work to be more aware of the sexual energy in your body and how it can merge with your partner's body. And you can't, and that's very tantric, but it's also very real. I must say, I've had a long life with a lot of different lovers and several marriages, and I never was aware of sexual energy and the power of it until I met Brian almost 10 years ago, and we've been married for a couple of years. And we really, really developed it, and I'm so aware of it now. And one night when we were having a sex playtime,
and it was, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. And I made a joke about social distancing because I stood 6 feet away from him, and I focused in on the merging sexual energy and my desire for him and his for me. And I say, oh, look, we're practicing sexual distancing here, 6 feet apart. It was all mind stuff, all mind, all in the mind. And it really works, but you got to focus in.
You know, and also I think, you know, just like we have different love languages, I'm sure everyone's heard, you know, some people want gifts of service and some people like words and some people like touch. I think we also have different sort of sexual languages. And some people it's much more physical. And some people it's more energetic. And some people it is more about sort of words and ideas, and for some people it's that, you know, role play, and some people are more kind of chameleon like. They can go with the energy, or they can go with the physical, or some people are more into the sounds. And so again, I think it wasn't until I started kind of coming across ideas about sexual energy when I first started exploring Tantra when I was, my early 30s or something, where I was like, oh, I'm really attuned to that. I already was, but I didn't have words for it. And then I met people who that was such a foreign concept, and that's someplace that they could learn about and learn to go. And when I first started teaching, also I just, you know, I remember I was doing a workshop where I did a whole sort of visualization thing, and at the end of the exercise, at the end of the class, somebody came up to me and they went, you know, look, I could see a lot of people were really into that visualization thing you were doing, but I got to tell you, while you were talking and you're saying, like, see this, and so I was like, it was all dark inside there. I had no idea what you were talking about. And I started realizing how we're all just put together so differently, and how our brains operate and our erotic energy operates. So for some people, that idea of sexual energy might really work for them, or it might work for one partner and not the other, but sometimes you can find tools. So for some people, it might be visual, right? I could say, imagine the energy is like a light, like a current of light. Or for some people, it might be more auditory. Imagine it's a note, you know, a sound, a song that's moving through you. It's music. And so for all of these things, sometimes it's a matter of kind of, some of us, we just knew that. Like, we just understood what sexual energy was. And the first time we heard people talking about it, we're like, oh, yeah, I know that, I feel it. Other people are going to be like, I don't know what she's talking about. But if you can imagine light or heat or colors or sensations, if we start playing with all these different frameworks, then we can expand our skill set, and also we can share that with a partner, right? So for me, if it's a sort of energy is like a visual thing, but my partner, it's like an auditory thing. It's like sound and music. Suddenly we can find a way to talk about it and play with it together that works for both of us once we've had those conversations and explored and then figured out ways to play with it that work for both of us. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does make sense. And in general, men fall more in love with their eyes, and women with their ears. So the auditory for the woman might arouse her more. Make love to me in my ears. Say the words. Say the lovely things. And for the man, it's a more of a visual thing, and the way we're wired. I mean, that's a generalization, but I think it's often true that we have different wiring, as you say.
Even with something like sound, you know, sure, I love hearing sexy words. And yet in terms of my ability to sort of say sexy words can be hard for me because my thinking word part of my brain goes away. Right? So
yes.
It's easier for me just even in the auditory realm. Sound is easy. I mean, at least once I broke through that, that mental chastity belt of, good girls.
Mental chastity belt, okay.
Right. All right. We have a lot of sound inhibition. But once I broke through that, sounds of pleasure were really easy for me. But it was really a challenge for me to start, talking, using words. What? How can I use words? My word part of my brain is not working. So even within the realm of the auditory, what I can do can vary. And then also what turns me on, I love hearing words. I love hearing sounds. My partner loves words. My partner loves sounds. So it's one of those ways where, where we can find a really deep compatibility, even though I had to, it was a stretch for me over the years to learn how to use words erotically. Anyway, so I think we all have.
It's interesting that both you and Carl, and this makes sense, you both value words and sounds. Mm-hmm. The words, you're both writers, and the words are important, but so are the sounds. And so I think you're really well developed in both those areas.
Well, but we had to get there, right? Because his thing was words, and mine was sounds. So even in the auditory realm, we sort of were in different places. So for him, for me to make sounds of pleasure and affirmation, I think I'm communicating so well. And he's still not like, what? But you're not using words, so he's not always getting it. So my stretch was to learn to use those words. And his stretch was to learn to be more soundy. Yes.
Sherry, we've got music.
Oh, it's
that means
time.
The show is ending. You'll be back. We have so much to discuss. Thank you so much, Sherry. You've added, once again, you're just a treasure trove of information and loveliness. I mean, you have such good heart and soul. I really appreciate you, Sherry. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Take care. Stay safe. Stay sane.
Happy feet. Do-da-da. Happy feet. Do-da-da. Happy feet. Oh, I love it.